Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about love,
sex,
connection,
abundance,
joy,
purpose,
peace,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves. So we are on the second to last episode of season 12.
So it's like a gazillion episodes about karma. So 12 seasons of a podcast about karma not being what many of us think. Magic being much more than any of us could assume. So we can start to grasp that there's a lot more to our existence than we know.
I mean, I just think, oh my God, it really wasn't what I thought it was. Mm-hmm. It was never as bad as I thought it was. And it was always greater than I thought it could be. And isn't that insane?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
That obviously I am the relationship person, so that's all usually the context I put stuff in, but none of my relationships and my karma were that bad. I mean, even that shit from like episode 2, season 1 to now where things, I know that sometimes things look a bit like whack on the surface, and I'm like, but actually they're pretty great and they're going to be even greater. And so you start realizing that there's way more to every moment and to our existence than we know. All that magic and all that knowing and all that feeling is probably more real than anything else. How I handled it, and I know we spoke about this in a previous episode this season, was I kept trying to channel my power into something, and that ended up being effectively a weird form of superstition. I know what I want, so I must do it this way. Or I know things worked out when I did something this way, so I must continue. And effectively, objects and circumstances become siphons for your power in a really weird, fucked up way. When I look around and I think about how sometimes, and it is kind of living in life in separation for so long, that no matter how far I've come and no matter how many times I can say that, you know, things were never as bad as I thought they were and things are going to be greater than I could even imagine.
Yeah. I mean, that's spoken like somebody on the other side.
Yes, but even as that, I still have the kind of shadow of something bad will come. Even though all evidence points to the contrary, I still tend to assume the worst sometimes, even though my heart is telling me that the worst doesn't exist. I still feel like I want to protect myself from the dark. Am I one step away from realizing that all of this is really, really extensively elaborate coping mechanism?
Yeah. As the person who held your hand as you cried many times, I don't think so.
But you know what I mean?
I do. Especially because, as I was saying before we started recording, you know, suddenly like I'm seeing all these things about, you know, is our physical reality an illusion? You know, like what is all of this? Like all from various perspectives, we can really question what we're doing here and why we're doing it and what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
Especially because when we really consider what's going on around the world or with people we might know or within our own personal lives, shit's fucked up. So is it always going to be fucked up? Are we living in a way in which it's just going to keep fucking it up? Like, it always seems like there's just that shadow that's just permanently there when you come out, like even when you, as you said, when you come out of your karmic-led existence. What we also have to contend with, even in magic. So, I mean, honestly, if you think about all the episodes that have preceded this one, right down to, I think, I finally get to explain magic in episode 17 and then 18. I mean, we talked about the pitfalls of magic around episodes 13, 14 or 12, 13. But 18 is where you really pushed me to explain some stuff I didn't really want to put into the podcast. But that's okay because it's fine. It came up, which was really why is magic so unforgiving? And there's just a lot to this existence that we have actually blocked. A lot to living in this world that we ignore or we think belongs to other people. That, you know, 3D separation is something I have within, but I've done my best to kind of be the best citizen I can or, you know, be the best person I can. And if shit's kind of falling apart, okay, well, like you, I'll just internalize that blame that I'm not doing enough. So we're having to, which is why 12 seasons in, we're still contending with the fact that even as we start to play with magic, even as we start to see that there is more to our reality than meets the eye, we have to contend with the fact that there's more to reality than meets the eye. So if you're going to be playing with magic and you're going to be seeing all of this, well, why do you think we have to see the other shit?
Why?
Because you have to be able to contend for all realities because everything has been existing at once. And it's always been a matter of perception. It's not as if we're existing in parallel realities. We're just existing. There's just multiple realities at play because we're not the only one in the game.
It's true.
And when our consciousness expands, we all see we've effectively been playing the same game with just a variety. But the playing field's somewhat different. It just looks a little different, right? But at the core, our character motivations are the same. Everything at the core is pretty much similar. We're just playing it out differently.
And so how does one manage that?
Well, you burn out your karma, first of all.
Yes.
And you embed yourself in your purpose. So you always have your purpose. You are always the constant in your life, and your purpose highlights that. Even if things kind of fall apart in your karmic undoing process, as you saw, most of your relationships stayed.
Yeah.
They just had to get a little bit, maybe they had to be resuscitated. Maybe you struggled a bit and found yourself a bit frustrated for a while until you come back together. Who knows? It's just different for everyone. Is it possible for me to be knocked out of my power? That's really the question at the core of that. And the answer is very simple. And this is something you and I have been discussing. If you feel like your power is that tenuous, then you haven't fully secured it.
Interesting. So then my question is, how does one secure their power? Your answer is going to be purpose, I'm sure.
No, actually, it's not.
Shocker. Flawed.
Mark the time and date. It's not. And I won't even use the D word. It has everything to do with your capacity. Okay, so the basic human response would be, then you have to test your resolve and see if you could live without it, right? But actually, the answer is, can you fuck this? Can you really be fucked to care? And that is something I've learned of late.
Expand.
It's not like detachment where it's like, oh, I really don't care. Like I can just let that concern go. It doesn't have to do with me. It doesn't touch me. I'm totally detached. It's can I really be fucked to care? Is that really where I'm going to put my power? Because the things we care about is an expression of our power. So, and that's why you say I would have said purpose. Purpose could be a part of that, but you're looking at a fuller, bigger picture.
So that's how you secure your power?
You secure your power because you value yourself to such a degree that nothing can knock you. It's like, I really don't give a shit what that person thinks of me. And it's not, again, it's not from a detached place. It's the fuck this, but it's almost like a constant one.
I will live as me. Mm-hmm. Or die trying.
Exactly.
You weren't able to change my heart. You weren't able to make me change. You weren't able to make me do all that stuff.
Because power is an intangibility. It is that intangible that whatever happens, whomever crosses our paths and says something or does something, it doesn't change. And that's what we mean. It just can't come and go situationally. It's not circumstantial.
And that's what you were talking about the last episode about giving away, dismissing your power. Is all of a sudden flinging it out. What you call that, I would just call that as starting to roll with the punches in a way that takes other people's considerations to a huge whole degree. Yeah. I will mute myself.
Yeah,
I will change myself. Yeah. Whereas I will live as me, and I can't do anything else. That because in that way you can never kill me.
Exactly. And it's interesting because when we're wired from our old karmic reality, we're wired for shame, we're wired for guilt, we're wired to be in many ways somewhat communal, as in to be cooperative. So we take into account other people's thoughts and opinions because maybe we care enough. But the reality is that also to be humble is to be humble with ourselves and to admit, even if I don't know everything, I know enough that this is okay. That can still be an expression of humility and maintain our power. Because when we consider other people too much, which is we are so saturated with and surrounded by it all the time with social media, that you can't, we're so inundated, you can't help but absorb some of that.
But these younger generations, you said before that they actually have less, like they don't come in with karma. They don't come in with all this wiring that we have. So they kind of, they live without the bullshit of, I don't know, deep regret and, you know, deep pain and all this kind of stuff that we all came in with, being like, oh, separation, oh, life, oh, I'm just going to carry my parents' shit and I'm going to just perpetuate it and it's all going to be, you know, super shit. But then I think about it and I think, yes, that is the life of the younger generations until we teach them otherwise.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're facing time and again with these choices that we're making and trying to manage it in our karma and how we're managing our world like that, because we end up putting all our shit onto these younger generations. And whether it's not actual karmic shit, so our kids aren't going to grow up with our karmic themes necessarily if we haven't dealt with them, it's more that we're teaching them to separate. And then what ends up happening is all these new people, all these new lives that are coming in who don't have that separation. And we've discussed this before about how effectively a lot of, and we definitely discussed it in Karmic Adventure, how a lot of the karmic undoing process is just reminding you who you really are. Right?
Yes.
We fuck it up for them, so then they have to come back to it. Well, instead of just allowing them to have always known who they really are.
Yeah. And to maintain that connection, which is really not easy. It's not easy for a parent. You know, for some, it's just a lot easier to filter your children through your karmic experience than to treat them as they really are. Because then you're forced to accept and deal with the fact that you forgot who you are.
Yes.
So you have to be able to maintain and hold yourself in your full divinity at a minimum to be able to raise these children with their full divinity.
Yeah. And I have some friends who are doing that, which is really cool.
It's very cool if they can do it. It is not as common.
I have
it's
one
becoming
friend.
More common.
I have one friend.
But it's really just, can we be our fullest selves with our children? And the answer is so often no. So with each generation, we're having to confront and face, if not ourselves, then what we're doing in this world. With these younger generations, and I mean younger, I'm talking about the ones that are have not even come in, but will be coming in the next couple of years. We're going to be looking at an entirely different template of person. And that's going to be really interesting to see, because these are souls. What I'm seeing is that these are souls who have not been incarnated or have been in body for many, many, many years. And hundreds, if not more. In understanding these younger generations, it's not their fault that circumstances are the way they are in terms of the world being shitty. It's because we haven't done the best job. But as parents and as the generations who've come before them, we could do a better job of giving them conditions in which they can thrive, even if the world is in chaos, even if the world is shitty. And
because
that's what we have failed to do.
They're the ones that are going to end up building this new world. And the thing is, you're right, because I think about it, would I have liked to have come in at a different time, like maybe now? And I think, well, maybe I would have missed like some of the dark shit. But actually, I know myself, I needed to be here now because I needed to be ready to fight. I needed to be ready to go when it was ready to go.
Yeah.
I didn't have the 20, 30 years to waste. You know, it's more about when I was ready to be my mature adult self and where the world was.
Yes.
Like, and that time needed to be right. Do you know what I mean? At some point, the world is going to have to hear.
Yeah.
And the world is going to have to adopt it. So I could really hold space for the not shit. Because otherwise, as we've discussed in season 11, I would have just been someone who was naive, who had never been their heart broken.
Yeah.
And me personally, I can't understand anything that goes on with anyone else unless I've experienced it for myself, unfortunately. I ain't that empathetic.
And there are these younger generations who do know what heartbreak is. It's not to say that they don't have their own challenges, but they come in ways in which they're not as devastating, or they don't have to be. Where lessons around self-reliance can still occur, and they can experience disappointment, but their emotional spectrum is very broad. But we're often trying to understand them in our very narrow ways, in which we keep saying, no, you must be depressed. You're not sad, you're depressed. You're not disappointed, you're, depressed. Everything kind of falls in this like one big depression umbrella, when really their spectrum of emotions is much broader than ours. But they don't know how to their experience of it in this earth plane while embodied can feel quite devastating to them because they're so used to wholeness.
So the consciousness with these new ones are going to be super high, right? Like
super high. It's going to be so high. It's something we've never seen before. And
Okay.
I know we've touched upon these new generations coming in previous seasons, but today we're going to talk about other ones.
Okay.
So in the previous seasons, these ones have already started to come in. And they really are our youngest. Now, what we're going to be seeing in a couple of years is another type of soul to come through. And they will carry, and this will make you very happy, the love vibration, love, capital L, love vibration, which will be massive. For others, it'll be the Om vibration.
Love is higher than Om.
Yes. So those, and I'm like, are any of these born this year? I mean, you're looking at a very minor, like handful, really. And there are some who are going to have that full bliss and like divine vibration. Can you imagine what that's going to be like?
No.
And again, I'm gonna harken back to that, like back in the, I don't know, 20 years ago when people were talking about, and I know they've been coming in, but the whole conversation around indigos was in the early aughts. The crystals and the rainbows and shit. And I'm just like, it's all well and good, but we need to see these kids not as special, but really as divine. And I know you hate that word. So I think the best word to see or to use really is power. They are powerful, this generation. And we're not meant to fear them, but we just cannot operate in a way in which we diminish that power.
Well, it's the difference between me saying I'm, as we were discussing at the beginning of the episode, I'm going to, using my mind, and I'm going to be ready to fight or flight, right? Fight for love. I am a love warrior, as it were, right? Like I've got this like warrior part of me that's like, I will fight and kill whoever stands in my way. Fight.
That's the hill you're going to die on.
Yeah, that's the hill I'm dying on. Whereas what we were discussing later on in the episode was live as me or die trying is more the warrior. It's just live as me. Mm-hmm. There's no need for the die trying part.
Yeah.
Because that's full-bodied expressions of being a lover and a leader and all those kind of things.
Precisely, because
there's
what's
nothing
going
to push against.
Yeah, because what connects these particular vibrations, the love, the Om, the bliss, is peace. So for these ones, it will always be about maintaining peace. And I've seen it in younger generations already have that vibration, which is quite peace-filled. With these ones, it's going to be out to a greater degree because we always operate like that. Again, we don't go from one generational shift to another. It doesn't just kind of stop, start, stop, start. There's always going to be overlap. So you're always bridging between these generations where some kids will carry enough of that vibration for us to get used to it and see what that looks like playing out in real time or in now time. But we don't always see the fullest expression of it. But now we're going to start seeing those young ones and these souls to the fullest vibration and expression. So there really aren't going to be many of them, but there's just going to be enough of them that they can begin to bring in the kind of the templates and the energy for this new millennia. And each one of these are going to matter because they're just going to harness the divine in such a way that they're going to show us what life can be like without conflict. Yeah. Since some of the earlier generations were a bit more prone to conflict.
I'd love
because
that.
They were forced to live in separation. They were forced to contend with separation on every level, whether it's within their family unit, within their community, etc. So there's always a little aspect of warrior or a desire to live apart. These ones, they will probably need to be parented apart. And I'm not talking about homeschooling necessarily. They'll just need to be parented by specific people who can really help them maintain that vibration. Or they won't, or they'll suffer deeply. They will suffer greatly. So they need to be born to very conscious parents, which is why, again, we've talked about birth rates falling and has everything to do with the fact that there are just souls not wanting to come in right now. We're not hitting points along our consciousness spectrum to enable that. Not on a bigger scale.
I guess that's the question, though. Like when you say that they'll be in peace and they don't have conflict, yes, there's a time for war. Yes, there's a time for fighting for love, let's say, fighting for the end of separation. But the idea that in our lives, our personal lives, who we are, that we can remain at peace regardless of what happens and we have a conflict-free life, that just sounds like a beautiful 5D life to me.
Thank you for listening. For more information, articles, and inspiration, find us at karmasmybitch.com and at karmasmybitch.insta.
And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review.